I was standing in the Costco parking lot last week, staring at my receipt, and something didn't add up. Not one item, not two items, a pattern. Most people scan their receipt, shrug, and move on. I didn't. I went back inside. I compared prices to what I paid 3 months ago. And what I found is the reason I'm making this video. There are certain items at Costco right now that are still priced the way they used to be, not the way they're about to be. If you shop there regularly, you already have a gut feeling about this. You've noticed the case sizes shrinking. You've noticed the price tag staying the same while the box gets smaller. This video is going to confirm what you already suspected. I'm going to walk you through 10 items that make sense to stock up on right now, based on what's actually happening with supply, packaging, and pricing trends heading into the rest of 2026. And somewhere between item 4 and item 8, there's one that genuinely surprised me. I didn't expect it. You probably won't either. I'll just say this now. You won't believe number 6. Before we get into it, if you find this kind of breakdown useful, go ahead and subscribe now. I put out this kind of research regularly, and I'd rather you not miss the next one. Okay, let's get into the list. Item number 1. Kirkland Signature Olive Oil. This is the one that got me thinking about all of this in the first place. Olive oil has been under pressure for a while now. Mediterranean harvests have been inconsistent the last few seasons because of heat and drought cycles in Spain and Italy, which together supply most of the world's olive oil. When the harvest is smaller, the wholesale price goes up, and that eventually works its way down to the shelf. Industry pricing reports have flagged olive oil as one of the more volatile grocery categories over the past couple of years, with far bigger swings than most pantry staples. Retailers who buy in bulk, like Costco does, are usually a step behind those swings, which is exactly why their shelf price can lag the market for a while before it catches up. I checked my last few receipts going back to early this year, and the Kirkland olive oil price has barely moved, even though I've seen smaller olive oil brands at regular grocery stores jump noticeably. I actually asked one of the stockers about it, half joking, and he just said, "Yeah, that one's not going to last." He wasn't trying to sell me anything. He just says what he sees come off the truck. If you go through a bottle or two a month, this is a good time to grab an extra one. It stores fine in a cool, dark cabinet for a long time, so there's no real downside to having a backup. Just don't buy more than you'll use in about a year, since the flavor does fade eventually. This isn't about panic buying. It's about not being the person who's shocked in 6 months when the price jumps and everyone else already knew. Item number 2. Rotisserie chicken. Everyone knows the $5 rotisserie chicken. It's basically a Costco mascot at this point. Here's the thing people don't think about. That chicken has been priced the same for years, and it's widely understood in the industry that it's sold at a loss or close to break even, specifically to get people in the door. Chicken feed costs, processing costs, and labor have all moved up over that same stretch. Costco has absorbed that gap instead of raising the price because the $5 chicken is basically a promise to their members at this point. Retail analysts have pointed out for years that loss leader pricing like this can't be sustained forever if the underlying costs keep climbing. Something eventually has to give, whether that's the price, the size of the bird, or the seasoning blend. I started buying 2 chickens instead of 1 on my last few trips, mostly because I noticed the birds themselves looked slightly smaller than I remembered. That's anecdotal, I know, but I also talked to a friend who works in food distribution, and she said portion sizing is one of the first things that quietly shifts before a price ever officially changes. My takeaway is simple. If the $5 chicken is a staple in your house, don't assume it stays $5 forever. Buy an extra one when you're there, shred the meat, and freeze it in portions. It holds up great in soups and quesadillas later. This one isn't just about saving money. It's about not being blindsided the day they finally announce a change. Item number 3. Kirkland Signature. Coffee is one of those categories where the writing has been on the wall for a while, and most people just haven't been paying attention to it. Global coffee prices have been climbing due to weather issues in major growing regions like Brazil and Vietnam, combined with rising shipping costs. This isn't a secret. It's been covered in trade publications repeatedly over the past couple of years. What is less talked about is how long large retailers can hold their shelf price steady before they finally pass the increase along. Costco tends to hold pricing on Kirkland branded staples longer than name brands because they buy in such massive volume and they're protecting their reputation for value. But that cushion isn't infinite. I drink coffee every single day, so I actually track this one closely without even meaning to. The bag size and price on my usual Kirkland blend has stayed consistent for a stretch now, while I've watched name brand bags at other stores get smaller for the same price. That's usually one of the earlier signs that a price adjustment is coming industry-wide. If coffee is part of your daily routine, grab an extra bag or two next time you're there. Whole bean stores better long-term than pre-ground, so if you have a grinder, lean that direction. Keep it sealed and away from light and heat. This is the kind of thing that feels small until you're the one paying $3 or $4 more per bag later and wondering when that happened. Item number 4. Frozen salmon and seafood. Seafood is a category where the pricing story is genuinely complicated, and that complexity is exactly why most shoppers miss it. Feed costs for farmed salmon have risen, and wild catch numbers have been inconsistent in a few key fisheries. On top of that, seafood is one of the more shipping-sensitive categories, since so much of it crosses oceans before it ever reaches a warehouse. Any disruption in that chain tends to show up in price faster than it does for shelf-stable goods. Seafood industry newsletters have flagged salmon specifically as a category to watch, given how tight margins have gotten for producers trying to keep retail prices where they are. I've bought the same bag of individually wrapped salmon portions for a while now, and the price per pound has been steady even as I've noticed fresh seafood counter prices creeping up elsewhere. Frozen tends to lag behind fresh pricing changes, so this is often where you get a little more time before the increase catches up. If you eat fish regularly, this is a good one to stock the freezer with. Individually wrapped portions thaw quickly and don't force you to cook the whole bag at once, which makes it easy to work into weeknight meals without waste. Nobody wants to give up salmon night because it suddenly costs twice as much. Getting ahead of it now means you don't have to. Item number 5. Kirkland Signature. Butter doesn't get talked about enough, but it's one of the more sensitive categories out there because it's tied directly to dairy commodity pricing, which swings a lot more than people realize. Milk production costs, feed prices, and herd sizes all factor into butterfat pricing, and that number moves in cycles throughout the year. When the underlying commodity price rises, butter is usually one of the first dairy products to reflect it, because the margins on butter are thinner than on things like milk or cheese. Commodity market coverage has consistently pointed to butter as one of the more volatile dairy products year over year, with noticeably bigger swings than fluid milk. I keep butter in bulk in my freezer basically year-round, and I've noticed the Kirkland 4-pack has stayed at the same price point through a stretch where I've seen name-brand butter jump at my regular grocery store. Butter freezes exceptionally well, which makes it one of the easier things to stock up on without worrying about spoilage. If you bake, or if your household just goes through butter quickly, grab an extra pack or two. Wrap it well, or leave it in the original packaging inside a freezer bag, and it'll keep for months without any quality loss. This is a small thing individually, but it adds up, especially around the holidays when baking season hits and butter demand spikes anyway. Item number 6. Bottled water and case beverages. Okay, this is the one I told you about. Number 6. I genuinely didn't expect this to make the list when I started looking into it. Bottled water and case beverages don't seem like they should be volatile. Water is water, right? But the real cost driver here isn't the water itself. It's the plastic. Resin and packaging costs have been climbing, and shipping a pallet of water is expensive because you're mostly shipping weight and volume, not value. Packaging industry reports have talked about resin costs putting pressure on beverage companies for a while now, And that pressure eventually gets passed to the shelf price because water margins are already razor thin to begin with. I never thought about this until I actually looked at what I was paying per case compared to a year ago. It hadn't moved much at Costco specifically, which honestly surprised me, because I assumed with everything else going on, water would have crept up too. When I mentioned this to someone I know who works in logistics, he said beverage cases are one of the categories retailers try hardest to hold steady, because it's such a visible price point for shoppers. Once that number moves, people notice immediately. If you go through cases of water, sparkling water, or other beverages regularly, this is a genuinely good time to stock up while the per case price is still where it's been. Cases store easily in a garage or pantry corner and don't expire in any meaningful way. I know this one sounds almost too simple, but that's exactly why most people overlook it. It's not exciting, it's just consistent, and consistent is rare right now. Item number 7. Kirkland. Signature nuts and trail mix nuts are another category that quietly tracks global weather patterns more than people realize. Almonds, cashews, and walnuts are all heavily dependent on specific growing regions and drought conditions in places like California, which produces a huge share of the world's almonds, directly affect yield. When yield drops, wholesale nut prices rise, and that eventually reaches the consumer. Agricultural trade reporting has repeatedly flagged nut crops as sensitive to water availability, more so than many other pantry categories, because the trees themselves take years to recover from a bad drought cycle. I go through the Kirkland mixed nuts container pretty regularly as a snack in my house, and I've noticed the size and price have held steady through a period where I've seen smaller nut brands shrink their bag sizes at other stores. That kind of quiet size reduction is usually an early signal, even when the big retailer hasn't adjusted yet. If nuts are a regular snack in your house, grab an extra container. They store well in a cool pantry, and if you want them to last even longer, the freezer works too and doesn't really affect the texture. This is one of those categories where the increase, when it comes, tends to come all at once rather than gradually. Better to have a buffer than to be caught mid-craving. Item number 8. Kirkland Signature Paper Towels and Toilet Paper. This isn't a food item exactly, but it belongs on this list because the underlying pricing logic is identical, and it's something every single household buys. Paper products are tied to pulp pricing, and pulp is a global commodity that responds to everything from mill capacity to shipping costs to demand from other paper-heavy industries like packaging. When pulp costs rise, paper goods are one of the more direct places that shows up because there's not much else in the cost structure to absorb it. Industry pricing trackers have shown pulp costs fluctuating meaningfully over recent years, with paper product manufacturers passing those changes along fairly quickly compared to other categories. I buy paper towels and toilet paper in bulk anyway, because, frankly, who wants to run out? But I did specifically compare what I paid for my last 2 Kirkland bulk packs, and the price per roll has been consistent. While I've noticed name brand equivalents at other stores creeping up in smaller increments that are easy to miss unless you're actually doing the math. If you have the storage space, this is a genuinely low-risk item to stock up on. It doesn't expire, it doesn't take up refrigerator space, and you're going to use it eventually no matter what. This is the least glamorous item on this list, and also one of the easiest decisions. There's no downside to having extra. Item number 9. Frozen pizza and prepared meals. Frozen prepared foods are interesting because they sit right at the intersection of a few different cost pressures at once, which makes them a good early indicator category. Cheese prices, wheat prices for the crust, and packaging costs all factor into a frozen pizza's final price. When multiple ingredient costs rise around the same time, retailers often wait as long as they can before adjusting price, because changing it too often looks bad to shoppers. But eventually, those combined pressures force a move. Food industry pricing analyses have pointed to frozen prepared meals as a category worth watching specifically because it reflects multiple commodity trends layered on top of each other rather than just one. I keep a couple of the Kirkland frozen pizzas on hand for busy nights, and I've noticed the price per pizza hasn't moved in a while, even as I've watched a few of the individual ingredients that go into it, like cheese specifically, get more expensive elsewhere. That combination usually doesn't last long before something adjusts. If frozen meals are part of your regular rotation, this is a reasonable time to stock the freezer a bit more than usual. They keep well for months, and having a few backups means fewer last-minute takeout orders when you're too tired to cook. This one's about convenience as much as cost. Protecting both at the same time is worth the freezer space. Item number 10. Kirkland Signature Canned and Pantry Staples. Last one, and honestly, this is the category that ties everything else together. Canned goods and shelf-stable pantry items depend heavily on both the raw ingredient inside the can and the metal or packaging around it. Aluminum and steel pricing have both seen upward pressure in recent years due to broader supply chain and tariff dynamics, and that cost gets baked into every can on the shelf, regardless of what's inside it. Packaging cost reporting has consistently shown that can and container pricing moves somewhat independently from the food inside, which means even stable ingredients like beans or tomatoes can see price increases driven purely by the packaging around them. I did a walkthrough of my own pantry while researching this, and a lot of my canned Kirkland staples, things like beans, diced tomatoes, and broth, have been priced consistently for a while now. Compared to smaller brand cans I've picked up elsewhere recently, the gap has actually gotten a little wider than I remembered it being. If you cook from pantry staples regularly, this is a good moment to round out your stock. These items last a long time, take up minimal space if you organize them well, and give you a real buffer if prices do shift later in the year. This is the kind of item that feels boring to talk about, but it's exactly the category that quietly protects your grocery budget the most over time. So here's the pattern. If you step back and look at all 10 of these together, none of this is about panic. It's not about empty shelves or dramatic shortages. It's about paying attention to the small signals that come before a price change, instead of only noticing after it already happened. Smaller packaging, steady shelf prices while ingredient costs rise elsewhere. Comments from people who actually work in these industries. Individually, each one is easy to dismiss. Together, they tell a pretty consistent story. The people who notice this stuff early aren't doing anything complicated. They're just paying attention a little closer than everyone else, and they're acting calmly instead of waiting until the price tag changes and it's too late to do anything about it. That's really what this whole channel is about. Not panic. Just being a little more informed than the average shopper so you're never the person caught off guard at the register. If this was useful, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown, because I've got a few more of these in the works that I think you're going to want to see. Drop a comment and let me know which one of these 10 surprised you the most. I read every single one. And if you know someone who shops at Costco regularly, send this their way. They'll probably thank you later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.